סליחה, היום ה-16 צהריים, אה, באוגוסט 26. זה וידאו שני שאני פשוט עושה כי יש דברים שהם מאוד חשובים לתקופה, ואני חושבת שכן כדאי להעלות אותם. תזכורת לאנשים שמאמינים שהבחירות הן מה שיצילו אותם, ולמה היא טעות חמורה ביותר לבצע את זה, וגם הקטע שביצעו אה, כדי לדאוג שיהיו גם ישראלים כאילו שוהים בחו"ל, שאין פיקוח, יש הרבה שנפטרו, שהם יכולים להכניס את אותם רשימות לתוך אותם בחירות, כי לא יעדכנו ש2 מיליון איש נפטרו, נכון? אז ה2 מיליון האלה כבר ידאגו לשים אותם בתוך, אז אם אתם חושבים שיהיה איזשהו, הרי התרמית הייתה לאורך ההיסטוריה, אז אם חשבתם לרגע שיהיו איזה שהן בחירות צודקות, אין מצב, אין סיכוי, זה אחד. דבר שני, שזה תאגיד, זה עסק, זה זכיין בריטי, אנחנו לא בוחרים עבורנו, הם הם בוחרים את האנשים שלהם. את הכנופיה הזאת שהייתה בארצות הברית, ואם אתם תראו את התאריך, עדיין בשנות ה-70, ב-60, הם רצחו כל מי שהיה אפשר. ה-CIA שעבר, שבעצם דאג גם לייסד את המוסד, ולהכניס לאט לאט את אותם מושחתים ואת אותם קנוניה לבצע, וזה לא משנה אם זה נקרא שב"כ, אמ"ן, לא מעניין. כל הביון הזה נשלט כתאגידים, ו... ואת המשטרה, זה הכי גרוע כרגע, הם הפכו אותה למשטרה קאפו פרטית בסגנון אותם אנשי ביון, שהם יכולים ושהם מייצרים את החוקים, שהם יכולים לעשות מה שהם רוצים. בלי בעיה להכניס בהינף יד כל מי שהם רוצים לכלא, שזה יום אחר אני ארשום לכם, יראה לכם את הפרטים, את הנושא הזה של הכלא. אני חושבת שפעם כבר הסברתי בפייסבוק דוגמאות מה שקורה, על כמה כסף הם עושים, על זה שהם מכניסים את האזרחים לכלא. אז כאן היום אני מביאה, המטרה בעצם העיקרית היא להשמיע את קארל וושינגטון על כמה דברים חשובים, ועל הדרך אני רציתי רק להזכיר לכם את הנושא הזה של מיסטר בוש. זה חלק מאוד חשוב, כי זו הקנוניה שהוא דאג, ואתם צריכים לבדוק כל אחד שקשור מאחורי בוש ואידלשטיין. זה חלק מאוד מאוד משמעותי שאף אחד לא מתבונן בו. הכנסת שהיא גוף שנקרא המוטב, עכשיו הוא כבר לא, כבר נגמר הסיפור ברישום שם, ב-company house היה כתוב The State of Israel, כן? אבל המוטב הוא הכנסת. המוטב זה צריך להיות האזרחים, לא הכנסת. המוטב הוא גוף בפני עצמו, שהוא דואג לחוקק, והוא דואג שעל ידי אותם חוקים שהוא ייקח את כל הרכוש הציבורי והאזרחי בכל התוכנית הקנוניה המרמה של אותם כללים, צווים, חוקים, שהכל פסול, כי שום דבר לא היה שקוף ואמיתי, והכל נעשה על בסיס תחום שיפוט ימי של פיראטים, קזרים, רוצחים, גנבים, בוזזים. והגיע הזמן לשים לזה סוף באיזשהו שלב. אז כאן 2 דקות.
Absolute proof that George H.W. Bush was the most important figure behind these grisly murders and the Kennedy assassination, surfaced quite recently in a declassified FBI memo, which revealed he was working for the CIA in 1963 and not from 77 onwards, as he'd always claimed. He had been a lifelong friend of George de Mohrenschildt, who had actually begged him for help when he realized the CIA were trying to kill him. It was therefore rather ironic that when the police checked de Mohrenschildt's wallet, they found an address card which gave them a direct lead straight to the guilty party had they but chosen to follow it up. It said George Poppy Bush, his CIA code name, Zapata Petroleum, Midland, Texas. It became a farewell note from the man who coordinated the crime of the century, a man whose father, Prescott Bush, had created the CIA in the first place, along with his friends, some 30 years before, purely in order to take care of their own business interests. They arrogantly believed they were more intelligent than anyone. But in the end, the means the George Bush-led CIA chose to silence all the major underworld figures who might incriminate them proved to be every bit as crude and obvious as Ruby's killing of Oswald on television.
אוקיי. זה בקצרה שהבנתם מי משפחת בוש, ואתם יכולים לחפור על ההיסטוריה, ללמוד לבד את כל הנושא הזה. מה שאני רוצה פה, עוד דבר נוסף להדגיש, מהסרט הזה של בוש, שהוא מאוד משמעותי. כן, דבר ראשון זה זה. זה הדבר הראשון שאני רוצה להראות לכם. אולי עדיף קודם את השני כדי שתבינו את זה. אתם לוקחים ויקיפדיה. ויקיפדיה, הרוב מה שכתוב פה, הם שינו, הם סידרו את זה בצורה מאוד מתוחכמת ויפה, אבל המון שקרים פה, כי כשאתה חופר אחורה, אתה גם מגלה, עשיתי וידאו מסוים, אבל כל פעם, ככל שעובר הזמן, אנחנו נעשים יותר, מוצאים עוד דברים ועוד דברים, ומחברים את הנקודות. אז כאן אני רוצה רק דבר קטן להדגיש, מי זה בעצם השם שהוא כאן מופיע, רגע, פה הוא מופיע, אבל הוא נולד הם תמיד משנים את כל השמות שלהם, יוריביץ', יוליאן, בקיצור, יולי, יואל, כל השמות האפשריים, יורי, מה שאתם רוצים, הבן אדם הזה יש לו כמו מיסטר ביביהו. אז כאן מופיע, במשך שנות המאסר, התנהל מאבק בינלאומי לשחרורו, בינלאומי. 3 שנים בלבד הוא ישב על כאילו השתילו לו סמים בבית. הוא ישב 3 שנים. ממש, כן? הוא היה דמות מאוד מאוד חשובה. האבא התנצר, האבא כבר מזמן היה משהו אחר. אבל הסיפורים הם יפים, הסיפורים מאוד משכנעים, ונותנים תמונה של אדם שנלחם וחושב. זה עוד פיסת אדמה שהוא שליח, שתול של אותם אנשים, בשביל לעשות את העבודה עבורם, אוקיי? שוחרר על ידי מי? במשך שנות המאסר התנהל מאבק, בינלאומי לשחרורו. אליו התגייסו גם מנהיגים מרחבי העולם, וביניהם סגן נשיא ארצות הברית, ג'ורג' בוש. סגן נשיא ארצות הברית, ג'ורג' בוש. לא יותר, לא פחות, המשפחה המפורסמת, שאיך אמרנו, CIA, בטח גם הרוקפלרים באים מהמשפחה הזאת, מי יודע, אני כבר לא זוכרת. אבל הנה, מה הוא עושה? מה הוא עושה? הוא, איך אומרים, איך כתוב כאן? רגע, אליו התגייסו גם מנהיגים מרחבי העולם, ביניהם סגן נשיא ארצות הברית ג'ורג' בוש, וההפגנות למען שחרורו נערכו בישראל ובארצות הברית. אוי אוי אוי, מעניין. הוא שוחרר במאי 87 ועלה לארץ, וכאן התחיל הבלגן. אבל כדי שתראו עוד יותר ברור, כן, אני מאוד אוהבת את המספרים שהם שמים, אלה שתכננו אותו. לפני 33 שנים, גם היו 33 אנשים הצביעו בעד מדינת ישראל, מאותו מקום. כאן במוסקבה, על ידי שלטונות ברית המועצות בעוון לימוד השפה. לפני 33 שנים נאסרתי כאן במוסקבה על ידי שלטונות ברית המועצות בעוון לימוד השפה העברית. נאסרתי כי לימדתי את השפה שהוא בקושי ידע, שבישרה לעולם את תחיית העריצות ואת שלטון הצדק. את אהבת האדם, את הפרסון, הבנתם? את הפרסון, את הישויות, אהבת הישויות המתות, ואת תקוות הדרור, ציפור הדרור, מה אתה אומר? היום אני עומד כאן לפניכם כיושב ראש כנסת ישראל. מה אתם רואים? יושב ראש כנסת ישראל, הוא אומר לכם, יושב ראש כנסת ישראל, key principle, הוא רשום בין 4, מנהל מפתח של תאגיד חברת הכנסת, הכנסת, the כנסת. ובאותה השפה שבעוון הוראתה נאסרתי, אני מברך אתכם בברכה היהודית העתיקה, שלום עליכם. גם בחלומותיי הטובים ביותר לא האמנתי שאגיע לרגע הזה. עבורי זוהי סגירת מעגל כפולה. שלי, יולי אידלשטיין, ושל העם היהודי כולו שאני עומד כאן כנציגו מאוקראינה, מהכלא, מבוש שהביא אותו, בוש לא מביא דבר בחינם, לא מייצג, מביא אנשים למטרה ייצוגית בחינם. אז החדירו אותו הרבה לפני, כי אנחנו לא יודעים מה הוא עשה בדיוק ברוסיה, וזה תפקיד של אנשים אחרים שיכולים להביא. הדבר הנוסף, כאן אני רוצה להראות לכם כמה הוא עושה כמה הוא פעיל, הוא היה פעיל גם למשרד הבריאות בזמן הקורונה, לא לשכוח. הוא היה פעיל בכל נקודה שהיה צריך. אז בואו תראו. יושב ראש הכנסת אידלשטיין אמר בראיון לעורך ישראל היום, בועז ביסמוט, בוועידת IAC בפלורידה, כי הוא מתכוון להעביר חקיקה בנושא. באיזה נושא? אתם מבינו, תוך זמן קצר, ממש קצר, ישראלים שגדלו בארץ לא הגיעו למה שהוא הגיע, אבל הוא, מבוש שהביא אותו, איזה קומבינה יפה. יושב ראש הכנסת יולי אדלשטיין אמר היום במהלך ביקורו בארצות הברית, כי הוא מקווה להעביר חקיקה שתאפשר לאזרחי ישראל להצביע בבחירות לכנסת, בקונסוליות ובשגרירויות בחו"ל. ברור, צריך להצביע לתאגיד. הרי איך אנחנו נבנה את האנשים שלנו בתוך אותה כנסת, בתוך אותו זכיין בריטי? רק דרך השגרירויות והקונסוליות, כי שם אפשר לרמות. שמעתי כאן בימים האחרונים קולות של תמיכה מקרב חברי הפוזיציה, ואני מקווה שחקיקה תאפשר לישראלים להצביע בחו"ל, סוף סוף תעבור. כך הצהיר לפנות בוקר במפתיע יושב ראש הכנסת יולי אידלשטיין בהופעה בוועידת IAC, שתבדקו, IAC זה גם אותיות גדולות, קיצורים, המועצה הישראלית אמריקאית, ולא לשכוח, אמריקה שהוא מתנהל איתה היא תאגיד, היא לא אמריקה אמיתית, זה הכל שקר. לא רק זה שהיא פשטה את הרגל. ונדמה לי זה היה בתאריך, כן, זה כבר תאריך, הרי ב-2015 הם כבר תכננו את כל הנושא של איך אנחנו מדללים את האוכלוסייה, איך אנחנו לוקחים בעלות, איך הכל. ומאותו רגע, זה 2016, הוא כבר מבצע את הפעולות שהוא אמור לבצע. לא סתם. רק חבל שהוא לא הלך לג'קל איילנד, אולי זה די קרוב. זה גם יכול להיות חלק מהסיפור, ג'קל איילנד. איי. מה עוד יש פה? עוד כשהייתי שר התפוצות אמרתי שאני לא חושב שישראל צריכה להיות שונה מארצות הברית ומצרפת, שני תאגידים. מיסטר מקרון והמקרוני והאישה הרוטשילדית שלו, הגבר שלו, וארצות הברית עם כל המאפיה. איזה יופי, ממש, איזה כמה שאתה נאמן, ושצריך לאפשר לאזרחים ישראלים להצביע בקונסוליות ברחבי העולם. אמר אידלשטיין בריאיון שערך עמו על בימת הוועידה, העורך הראשי של ישראל היום, עוד פעם להדגיש אותו, בועז ביסמוס, באשר להשפעה של יהודי ארצות הברית על המתרחש בישראל, ליושב ראש הכנסת הייתה דעה מאוד מעט שונה. לכל יהודי הזכות לדבר ולהביע דעה על ישראל, ואנחנו צריכים להקשיב, לא להתעלם, הסביר. אבל האחריות הראשונה של ממשלת ישראל היא להגן על אזרחי ישראל, לקדם את טובתם. זכות ההצבעה, ממש לקדם את טובתם. היית כל כך בעד רעיון ההזרקה ל6 מיליון פלוס, אוי, כמה אתה נחמד, באמת אתה דואג לאזרחי ישראל. יותר גרוע מזה לא יכול להיות. טוב, נמשיך הלאה, כי זה כבר, אני לא אכנס, זה מרגיז אותי, אני לא אכנס לדברים.
Was not really a country at all, and you could easily see it. It wasn't covered up well because it was done hundreds of years ago. So you could see the flaws in it, and every time that I brought these things up into court or anywhere, I didn't get one rebuttal. So I went, okay, this is the truth, and otherwise they would say so. And I wrote even right up to the Queen Elizabeth, and so she would know if what I was saying was wrong, and I got no reply.
Okay, so you said that what it should have been. You said Canada, there's a difference between what it should have been and what it was.
Yeah.
I can imagine that you mean by what it was that it was a corporation,
Yes.
registered, and that it was solely about business and companies and partnerships and money and commerce and business. But what should it have been in the first place? Because this will give people an understanding what the law system represents in Belgium, because we probably have the same issues.
Yeah.
What should it have been in the first place?
It should have been a country, and it should have been operating under a written constitution that would be clear and gave the relationship between the ones governing and the ones that are being governed.
Yes.
And all the different aspects of that. Now, there is a document that exists called the British North America Act that they portrayed as that document. But the problem was that Queen Victoria in 1893 had repealed it by removing the enacting clause.
Wow.
So they pretended it was still in effect, but it wasn't. And so the whole thing dropped back to the Hudson Bay Charter, which was clear charter for a monopoly corporation to run as a government.
Oh.
So it was allowed to make its own laws
Mhm.
and enforce them. It had courts,
Mhm.
it had jails,
Mhm.
it had cannons, artillery to defend itself at the forts. It had use of the Royal Navy and Royal Army, and then it had the police force known as the RCMP, and these things all still exist. So when you read the Hudson Bay Charter and you look at how things are today, it lines up.
Okay.
So that's the problem. People think it's a country, but it's not. It's running under the Hudson Bay Charter.
It's a corporation.
Yeah.
So I'm going to briefly translate what Cal just said. So Canada is not a country, but it is pretending to be a country. Every law or everything that is legally valid or lawfully valid needs an enactment clause. Dat is een toetredingsclausule in Dutch. Without an enactment clause, it is not valid. It has zero power. You cannot use it. You cannot enforce it without it. And because Queen Victoria did not sign it or appeal to signature, that's what you said, right? It became an invalid law or an invalid piece of law. And so they needed something else. And they came up with the Hudson Charter?
No, the Hudson Bay Charter pre-existed.
Okay.
So Hudson Bay Charter goes back to 1670.
4 years after.
Yeah, so it's in line with the Dutch the East India Trading Company, the East India Trading Company out of London,
Mm-hmm.
the Virginia Company, all these massive corporations, and that was the first investing type things. Those were all like joint venture type corporations. So it's at the same time as one of those.
Mm-hmm.
So the Hudson Bay Company was a charter from 1670 given to the cousin of the king at the time, King Charles II, and giving him a full monopoly. So some background: Prince Rupert, who was the cousin of the king, was a privateer, which is a licensed pirate, and a slave trader.
That's right.
So a slave trader and a pirate was the first governor of what we know as Canada, and it has not changed.
That's right. Because the names are pirateered every day.
Yeah, so that ran for about 200 years,
Hmm.
and everybody knew it was a corporation. What they did was a couple of things happened. There was the gold rush in British Columbia. So British Columbia is on the west coast of Canada, and it was not part of Rupert's land. So on that side of the Rocky Mountains was all native land.
Mm-hmm.
They found gold over there, a lot of it. So all the Americans were coming up, and then the Americans bought Alaska in 1866. And then, so the Canadian, the Queen was getting nervous about the Americans moving into British Columbia, and then also they were considering buying the Hudson Bay Company, so that the Queensland would have been just the maritime, the East Coast, 4 provinces. So she formed a dominion out of the 4 provinces that they had, so that they could acquire Rupert's Land, which was most of Canada. So that was the meaning. That was the original intent of the British North America Act. It even says that in the preamble. Okay. So one of the reasons for this act is to acquire this Rupert's Land. Yeah. So they surrendered she formed the Dominion. Then they surrendered the Hudson Bay Charter to her. So now she has it. Mm-hmm. And then 20 years later, she removed the British North America Act. So now she's in charge of the
total dominion.
Well, she got rid of the Dominion, but she has the Hudson Bay Charter.
Oh, yeah.
So she's running the corporation as if it's a country. Mm. And then over time, people keep voting and they just think it's a country, and it's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
They just change roles and change people with same functions.
They didn't even change the people. The people that were running the Hudson Bay Company ended up in the Dominion.
Okay.
It was so obvious. So this is where, when I saw all this, I went, okay, this is very clear what has happened here. So then, with removing the enacting clause of the British North America Act. Now we're running under the Hudson Bay Charter again. But in 82, Trudeau, I guess, saw this and tried to fix it.
Okay, what did he do?
He took the British North America Act, gave it a new name called the Constitution Act, added the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that everybody keeps going on about, thinking that it has some validity, and then they couldn't pass it because one of the important things about the British North America Act is it created the Parliament and created legislatures in the provinces.
So they created the slave system that way.
Well, no, it's without that document, without the British North America Act, there is no Parliament in Ottawa. There's not, it doesn't exist because it got removed when she removed the enacting clause of the document that forms them.
Right.
So they knew this and they tried to fix it in 1982 by changing the name, but the same words in the British North America Act. And then the only way they could pass it, because there was no Parliament, you can't create the thing that's in the document can't create the document or can't give it any validity. So they had the Queen come over to do a proclamation in order to give it any force and effect. And she put a clause in there saying that the French-speaking people in Quebec would have to sign off on a language issue, which she knew they would never do. So the whole thing has been in limbo for over 40 years. So we're still under the Hudson Bay Charter, and this new act is pending, but they keep acting as if it's valid.
Mm.
So when I'm in court and I bring this up to a judge, they generally want to get out of the room.
They do not even argue it.
Nope, I have had zero rebuttals on this.
Okay.
And these are type of people who will rebut anything you say.
That's
I mean,
right.
yeah, they're usually
That's right.
are trying to be the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, they're trying to impress themselves onto you
Exactly.
to make you smart.
Exactly. They have no rebuttal for this.
Okay. And then after that, when you bring this up, how would you proceed? If they try to ignore it or if they try to invalidate it?
Well, I was still in the beginning stages. I would just say, you can't make me do this, and I'm not coming, etc. And all I do is get arrested, right? So I was like, okay, what do we do? Because they don't see they understand the truth, but they don't seem to care. Like, it doesn't matter that I'm correct. They have the guns, and what are you going to do?
All right. Yes.
Then I learned commerce. So now I've got 3 court cases running in my life, which was eating up my life. I had to spend a lot of time preparing and then just showing up, missing work and all kinds of things. The first time I did a commercial move, the judge ran out of the room.
And what do you mean with commercial move?
So commerce is an ancient jurisdiction that's running in every so-called country. And this is the old merchant law that goes way back into antiquity that they've hidden. They don't talk about it, but it's very prevalent.
That's right. They don't talk about it in Belgium too.
No, they don't talk about it anywhere. It's not taught in law school. No lawyers know about it. Some lawyers know about it, but they're not taught it. They would learn it somewhere else.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not in the law schools. And yet you'll see law merchant mentioned in federal acts, et cetera. So, but nobody knows what it is. But it's what's running the world. So when I started to tap into that and using indemnity bonds, indemnity bonds are like from Admiralty, and when the people started using shipping. So you had to insure the cargo, insure the crew, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to tap into this. I didn't know much about it, but I did a bond on a case that I had already been involved with for over a year. And I'd seen the judge 2 or 3 times and over that period, and he ran out of the room.
Mm.
So at first I thought he had to go to the bathroom because the urgency of the way he left, and nobody said all rise or anything. He just got out, and everybody's looking around like, what's happening? Like the sheriffs and everybody's like, right? So I thought it was just he had stomach problems, and but later that night, I thought, oh, wow, I wonder if it's because of the paperwork I put in. So let's do that again and again and again. And we got the same kind of reactions. The judges were terrified of what we were doing. We still didn't really fully understand it because it was trial and error. So that's when I saw that, that was when the tide, waves are coming in and then the tide goes in. And then at a certain point, the tide starts going out. Well, that was the tide going out for me. So there's still waves. I still had some turmoil, but at that point, that's when my whole life changed. My whole experience with the courts and the government changed.
Okay, can we back up a tiny bit?
Mhm.
So for the people who don't know, can you please explain to them what is a bond?
A bond is insurance, basically. So when going back into the Middle Ages and slightly before that, the merchants moved on the land. So they would go in like camel trains, etc., the Silk Road, all these things we've heard about, we don't really understand. The merchants of Venice, etc. When they started to ship in boats, certain things happened. The ships would become wrecked, lost, or pirates would get them. So piracy was a big thing. So much so that you could be a licensed pirate. Think about that. So now you're sending a boat out with cargo on there from, say, Belgium over to London, England. And you don't know if that cargo is going to get there. So there was this Lloyd's of London, etc., sprung up from all that. So that the whole insurance industry, but you had to bond the boat, and you could borrow based on that bond of the boat as well. So you could borrow money based on the boat, and somebody would have an interest in it. So this is where all these interest, legal titles and etc. Exactly. So you had to bond the boat, you had to bond the cargo, the crew, because sometimes the crew would disappear and you'd have a new crew by the time it got there and you wouldn't know why, and then the captain. So there was bills of lading that said it's this boat, this cargo, this is the crew, and this should all get to the destination, and then somebody would check at the dock and go, yeah, everything's here, sign off on it. And so that's the whole bonding thing. So it has to do with commerce and moving stuff on boats mostly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the second question is, you said when you got into learning commerce, but how did you learn about commerce? Because as you said, it is not taught in law schools. It is not taught in the public school system. It is definitely not available in a local library. So how did you come across this information, these books?
Well, it wasn't so much books. I was immersed in this thing for many years, and they weren't winning against me, and I wasn't winning against them. But I had to keep coming to court. So is it like, when is this going to be out of my life? Because I'm not giving up, and they're not giving up. It's like a staring contest. They can't seem to get on top of me, but I can't seem to get on top of them either. So we're just keep
stalemates.
Yeah, banging them, but I got to keep showing up here. It's So I was willing to try anything. So I started with the name game, the birth certificate. I tried everything. I tried red ink, all of it. I did it all. I was trying to get out of this. So commerce, there was a seminar that was in a town about 4 hours from where I live. And it was this guy teaching commerce. And so I thought, well, I'll go and try that. That's the next thing I'm going to try. That's, where I was at. And that's when things changed. So I went to this seminar and I went, whoa. And I had a lot of epiphanies, like the light bulbs going on when I was there, because I had already done so much and pushed so hard on this thing. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't victorious.
Yes.
Because I could see the judges looking at my paperwork and going, and then you can see they're like, whoa.
They're shaking.
Yeah. And yet they still rule against me. And I'm like, well, how do I win in here, right? Not that I wanted to win. I wanted to get away from it.
Yes.
That was my goal, like get out of my life. And so this was just the next thing, and it turned out that that was the thing that actually changed my life, and so I started to study that. But it was the seminar that gave me the open door towards it.
Yeah.
And then when the judge ran out of the room, I went, okay, what is it? Why did he run out of the room? Because I don't understand what's happening. So then I started to search, and you can find stuff, but if you don't know it's there, you don't look for it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So to make it practical and available to people, when you're looking for information regarding commerce in legislation or law, how would you look for it? Where would you look for it? Are there certain websites that you search on? Are there certain people you try to contact?
You can just look up law merchant or lex mercatoria in Latin, and then you'll be just with a search engine, and it will lead you down like paths. It exists.
Right.
But if you don't know to look for it, that's the problem.
That's right.
So there's a book from the 1600s written by somebody who was born in Antwerp.
Really?
And then he calls himself a British merchant, but he was trying to convince the king at the time, I think it was King James the first, to adopt commerce more freely, because the courts didn't like what was happening in the commercial world with all the bills of exchange and promissory notes and international bills of exchange, etc. They saw this as a scam, and so he was trying to convince them, no, you got to be up to speed because this is how commerce works. So it's been around. It's just not. They tried to hide it, but you can't hide something if you know where it is. Yeah.
Let's look at that last remark. You can't hide it. So, for example, when you see, I try to explain it when you have window dressing in front of a store and when it's actually inside the store.
Yeah.
And when you see the legislative system, the judicial system, and you see what's happening in front of the store, the dressing, they seem to operate a certain way, which actually it's done a different way. So, for example, when you enter a court, you are asked to defend yourself, to represent the defendant role.
Mm-hmm.
What happens economically? What happens on paper? What happens in commerce at that moment? What is created? What kind of bills? What kind of documents?
Well, since the 1930s, when they crashed the stock market and then pulled the cash back, created the Depression, they forced all the countries to pledge their citizens. So
it's collateral for the national debt, right?
Correct. So in order for them to put money back into the system, because they pulled the money back, they said you have to register and then you have to create income taxes, and we're going to tax the people to pay back what we're going to lend you. But they lend out of nothing.
Exactly.
So, but prior to 1933, all the paper money was represented by gold or silver. So you could redeem it for gold or silver. And then after 1933, they took that off. And so now there's just pieces of paper, but we're expected to service that debt. So when you go into a court, they're looking at the birth certificate name, and that's the pledged piece. And there's a trust that goes with that, which, you don't want to get into that too much, but that's what they're looking for. So they create the law, you can't drive here or you can't walk here, and there's a fine. It's a money-making thing because these are all for-profit corporations. So they create laws that generate
commercial laws.
Yeah. Well, not even commercial laws. It can be, don't walk here. But the penalty is money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. So you can see that it's a business that it creates laws as its source of business.
Income.
Yeah, exactly. And then the taxes, most of that goes to the international banking system because they've lent that corporation some money based on how many people are there. So they have to do a census every 5 years that counts the assets. And then they have to, from there, they can figure out, okay, how much can we tax over the next 10 years? How old is everybody, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So everything's commerce.
So they actually made a lot of legal pledges, and because they made so many, or they have such debts over their shoulders, they thought, let's pledge our citizens with us together so that we can bond with them, or they can bond the citizens on paper.
Yeah.
So every time a citizen tries to do something commercial or in commerce, we can bond them on that paper and earn money.
Correct.
Right? That's how it works, right?
Yeah.
So I just want people to realize that every time you do something, drive a car, you possibly run someone over, or you have an accident, or you buy something in a store, everything is recorded, everything can be bonded, everything has a price, everything can be traded on the bond markets.
Yep.
There is a piece of everything everyone does in the name of the citizen that is bonded on paper and available in the bond market right now.
Yes, and you can track this, track these. They bundle things and put it in the bond market, or even just in the stock market through mutual funds. And there's a thing called QSIP numbers where you can trace every document and every piece that's in a mutual fund or a bond fund.
Or as you said, bundled together.
Yeah.
Because as I understand correctly from sources, every year when a nation, let's not call it a country, let's call it what it is, a nation, needs to figure out how to pay off a debt or try to lessen it, they bundle birth certificates as collateral to pay off a certain amount of that debt with interest and everything bundled together. Is that correct? Is that how they do it?
Yeah. And there is a trust called the SKV trust in behind it, but they can't access the full amount of the money on behalf of the beneficiary, not legally. So, especially by traffic tickets and everything, you're only getting a small amount. So a lot happens at death.
Probation.
Yeah.
And the trust goes through
probate. Yeah. So, and if you don't understand what's happening, that trust doesn't disappear. So if you thought about it, a big way to make money would be to reduce the population.
Exactly, because they can let a whole lot of trust go through probate, and because no one understands trust law, they can claim as much of what is in the trust available in the
exactly.
trust.
So world wars are money makers, wars in general. But if you can get a world war where there's a lot of people participating, like World War I and World War II, those were big money makers. So right now they're moving commercially rather than using bombs, etc. The weapons are now vaccines. From our perspective at Empower, vaccines, chemtrails, smart meters, and 5G. But they're getting us to participate. They're getting us to agree with these. Yeah. So this is a different way of, rather than just moving, artillery right through your town, they're getting you to go, yay, I want a faster phone. And you're actually participating and accepting the weapons.
Exactly. And because you accept their agreement or you accept the technology, they can create more bonds, more legal paper for them to earn money.
Yeah.
Because I also understand that they don't need you to do everything. They just need you to participate in whatever you do, and whatever you do, they can legalize and they can create documents out of by which they can make money.
Absolutely. Everything is about money, the whole thing. Money runs the world. Those that create the money are in control, not the governments. The governments are subject to them. There's even a picture of one of the Rothschilds with his finger on Prince Charles. He was,
you're my slave.
Yeah, like you don't touch royals, but obviously that guy can. So it shows you who's actually running things, even though we don't vote them in or out. It's because they have control of the money system.
Okay. Let's dial it back to the commerce part, because that's the most important part of in power and the notice of liability. What are certain aspects, characteristics that from commerce that are embedded in the notice of liability that you use? Because a lot of people in this room have already made one, a notice of liability, but I think it will be very interesting for them to understand why it works the way it does and why people get shook up about it, judges, lawyers, they get no response. Can you elaborate on that, please?
It's based in commerce. So the four things that I mentioned, the smart meters, 5G, spraying in the air, and vaccines, they're putting them out as offers in commerce. And then what happens is in true commerce, when you're dealing merchant to merchant, if you don't do a certain action, then you're in an agreement.
Yes.
And it's called tacit agreement.
Tacit agreement, yes.
Yeah.
In het Nederlands noemen wij dit stilzwijgend akkoord gaan.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're taking that principle that they've been using against us for generations. And we're saying, okay, we will take your smart meter, your vaccination, your 5G, or your spraying in the air, if you can prove they're safe, which they can't because they're actually weapons, and weapons are never safe. They're designed to destroy things. So, and they are truly weapons. So, and then if you don't prove it's safe to a certain standard in affidavit form, then I'm going to charge you $20,000 a day. And then we go, do you want to have, do we have a deal? If you now go silent, then you have agreed, because were just doing that to us. So we flip the table on them. And when they keep putting these four weapons up, then we start billing them. And the bills are bills of exchange. So it's not something you collect the money with, it is the money in their system. And that's the hardest part for people to understand, because it doesn't make sense. And that's because we're on the bad side of this. And that's why the Rothschilds are the Rothschilds and we are where we're at, is because they understand that the bill of exchange is money and we don't.
And they know how to use it. And in general, people don't know how to
Exactly. Use it. And it's not available to us to turn into cash readily or into a liquid form that's exchangeable, because the baker down the street doesn't understand a bill of exchange anymore. Just like you said with the checks,
yes,
we've been trained out of it. Say 300 years ago, everybody would have known what a bill of exchange was. They may still not have accepted it, depending on whose name was on it, but they knew what it was. Now we don't even know what it is, and 20 years from now, people won't know what checks are.
That's right.
Because they're all tapping with their phones, etc. That's the new training thing.
Or they probably will not even remember what money is, or money that you can touch with your fingers.
Exactly. So you can see where they're going with this. So they will have full control, and but it's still based on the same principles, like you said earlier. Those never go away.
Also, I would like to add some extra remarks regarding commerce. So what the notice of liability does is it conditionally accepts an offer. It does not deny the offer, because if you deny an offer, you are in dishonor in commerce. And when you're in dishonor in commerce, they can legally charge you. Right? They can come after you. They can put you in front of a court or whatever court they want, because you rebutted their offer and you were not in honor. You were not acting out of honor. When Kyle sends them a notice of liability and they fail to respond, they are also in dishonor, right?
Yep.
Because they need to, in commerce, they need to reply. And if you do not reply, you are in dishonor and you are basically in the wrong. You basically lose the game, right? Because it's a game. It's a game of what I like to call ping pong.
Exactly.
And the one who has the better way of striking the ping pong ball wins, right?
Correct.
So after having said this, when you send them a notice of liability, I understand that there are different rounds to this process. At a time when David Straight came here to Belgium 2 years ago, he also said 5 steps, different steps. but I can't remember them exactly. But you end with an executed judgment, or a summary judgment?
No, yeah. So it's called a notice of default. That's the title of it, but it is it's a notice of judgment and an estoppel, et cetera, et cetera. So it finishes the negotiating part of a contract. So a contract starts with an offer, then you either accept it straight up like this, or you accept it with, no, I want that finger down. Okay. And then you go back and forth. So if you bought a house, you've been through this, you negotiated
The terms of the contract.
Exactly. So that's called the meeting of the mind. So you have to have offer, an acceptance, and generally the meeting of the minds is before the acceptance. You can accept right away, but then you have the negotiating part, then you have the ratification or the finalization. Then there has to be actual money move.
Yes.
That's it. That's a full contract. What happens is sometimes you can get into these contracts, but they continue on because I bought 5 shirts, and then next month they're going to send me another 5 shirts. But I have to stop it in some way. Otherwise, they're going to keep sending me 5 shirts and I have to pay for them. So you got to understand that that's all part of commerce, and it keeps commerce moving quickly rather than sitting down every month. Okay, I will take these 5 shirts and then we sign. And it's too slow. So there's reasons for all this. It's just they've abused the
ignorance of the people.
Exactly. They've kept us ignorant so that they can take advantage of how it works, and we don't understand it.
So when you have the notice of liability, can you explain step by step each document? You don't have to say exactly what is stated in it, but what it does, what it creates, and so people can understand the different steps in the process and exactly where they are depending on the document they are sending, or at the or first, second, third, fourth document, where they are, and so they can try to orient themselves in this whole process. Can you please explain it?
So
אוקיי. אני פשוט רציתי שתראו את ההבדלים, מה שקרה בקנדה, לגבי הנושא הזה של ההבדל בין ארץ למדינה. ובקיצור, רימו אותם באותה מידה, כי היא תאגיד. וגם ההסבר, יש להם פה את הנוסח, את ההסבר לגבי המלוכה הבריטית, ושלא תחשבו, אצלנו זו אותה גברת בשינוי אדרת, הם עשו את אותו דבר, ולכן מעולם ישראל לא הייתה, רגע, אני אסגור את הדלת, מעולם לא הייתה, לא הייתה שייכת לנו, כי היא מראש הפכה לתאגיד, היא הפכה כל מה שהיה נקרא סטייט, בעצם זה היה מתכונת בשביל לסדר את הנושא של ייצור תאגידים בכל תחום, רק שלא ידענו משהו אחר. רוב האנשים, כמו שהוא אמר, לא מודעים לדברים שהם מבצעים מאחורי הקלעים, וההתנהלות, כפי שראיתם את האצבע על המלך, את הרוטשילד שמנהל את העניינים, ככה הוא עשה עסקה למטרות שלו, ראה אותה כעסקה רווחית מאוד, בפרט שהוא גידל דור של לשנוא את הצדדים משני הכיוונים, כדי שבאופן קבוע יהיה מלחמה. איך אמרנו, מלחמות עושות את הכסף. זה מחריד, מזעזע, והוא מסביר את תהליך, מה זה בעצם in power, אבל זה פחות רציתי יותר להדגיש את הנושא הזה, איך הוא מסביר לגבי כל הנושא של תאגידים, ושהכל מתנהל כמסחר, אם זה בתי משפט או לא משנה מה. אז ישראל באותה מתכונת, אבל הבעיה היא שמ-23 שנגמר ההסכם, הם חייבים לנקות את השטח. לכן הם מביאים את השיטור שלהם כדי להוציא מהאנשים כל דבר אפשרי. הם כבר בזזו את רוב מה ששייך לעם מבחינה ציבורית, כאילו, אבל זה השלב שצריך להבין שבשום אופן אסור להמשיך, אסור לנו הפעם לוותר. זה הכל בינתיים, וידאו קצר, ויום טוב.